Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and I want to talk about Lawmen, Bass Reeves, the brand new television show that came out in 2023. It's absolutely spectacular. Absolutely love that show. I just finished it, season one. Spoilers for season one here in this content. And we as Dungeon Masters and we as Dungeon Performers need to talk about this. Okay. All right, so why do dungeon performers and dungeon masters need to concern themselves with lawmen Bass Reeves? Well, a couple reasons. One, it's spectacular narrative. Okay, it's tier one narrative. It is worthy narrative, right? And it's really important. It's important narrative, right? So from that perspective, and I want to be super clear, right? Once you're a dungeon master, once you're a dungeon performer, you're no longer a human being. You don't have the right to just watch stuff because it's fun, right? Like that's not what we don't process like that anymore, right? We like everything that comes in. We have to build worlds. We have to build worlds, and these worlds need to be transformative and realistic and powerful and dramatic and dynamic, right? You know how that happens? By understanding humanity at a level others don't, right? And that's what Gary Gygax tasked us with. He's like, you're a world builder. You as a dungeon master, you as a dungeon performer. And I am starting to use this term, dungeon performer, as as a key aspect, right? And I think it's really incredibly valuable to think about dungeon performer, right? Because to think about things as a dungeon performer, Dungeons and Dragons player, go with God. You guys can do whatever you want. You want to cut goblins in half with some hack dungeon master, do it, right? Dungeon performer is somebody who's dedicated to what they're doing, right? Is looking for the moment they have put ink to the character sheet, are making a promise to that character sheet, to that character, to bring it to life, to allow that character to have everything that's in the person, and to allow the person to receive everything the character is ready to bring, right? Like that's a dungeon performer, okay? So dungeon master, dungeon performer, we are tasked by Gary Gygax to never look at, some people were like, oh, I watched this bad movie the other day. It was, I got bored. First of all, you should never be bored as a dungeon performer and a dungeon master. If you're ever bored, there's a problem with you and you need to fix it, right? I've never been bored in my life because I'm a world builder, right? I have a task list so long, the task list will have 1,000 items on it when I die. Some fool rolled up on my comments the other day. I was like, I watch you when I'm bored. Right. First of all, if you're bored, you're not running your life correctly, right? Because you should never be bored, right? And so dungeon masters and dungeon performers are always seeking tier one gold content narrative so that we can use it, we can squeeze the juice from it to build better worlds ourselves, right? And Lawmen Bass Reeves is, in my humble opinion, the absolute best show that was created in 2023. So as a storyteller, as a story builder, you need to witness it, okay? The other thing is it's a tale of diversity, a tier one tale of diversity. That's what we do. We tell tales of diversity, right? We tell tales of the marginalized. We tell tales of the minority. Why? Because Gary demanded it, right? In 1983, he said, hey, this is what a Dungeons & Dragons team looks like. Diana the acrobat, right? Black women play Dungeons & Dragons. We are telling tales of diversity. We are telling tales of minorities. We are telling tales of marginalized people. And we tell them so that everyone in this world knows you can be marginalized, you can be a minority, you can be a diverse human and be a hero, right? And we are tasked. You and I don't get to tell. Oh, every player at my table is white. Every player character is white. We don't get to do that. We're not allowed. We are bound by the legacy of Gary Gygax. He was a kind, tolerant, progressive American who said, you will tell tales of diversity with Dungeons & Dragons. And Hasbro D&D gets in trouble to this day, right? Like Strixhaven, people are like, oh no, these two people are kissing, going to a prom, and they shouldn't because diversity is wrong. Or like D&D is constantly under pressure for telling tales of diversity. We're saying everyone will be represented here. All people are valued no matter what the color of their skin is, no matter what their preference is, no matter what their gender is, right? Dungeons & Dragons is built from 1974 to 1984 to 1994 to 2024 to 2004. Every decade is a drumbeat of tales of diversity. You as a dungeon master are bound to it. Bound to it. It is your duty. And if you're not meeting it, get out of the table. Get a step away from the table. If you are not telling tales of diversity, you are not doing Dungeons & Dragons. And you do not deserve your Dungeon Master crown. Take it off your head. Place it down, sir. Place it down, ma'am. That's what we do. We're bound by Gary's legacy to do it. Right? So Lawman Bass Reeves, every dungeon performer over the age of 18, every dungeon master over the age of 18, go see this thing. It is behind a paywall. If it's if you're unwealthed at the moment, no problem. You get a pass. All right, okay. Because Gary understood. He understood people's limitations, right? All right. So, why are we talking about this today? So that we can better understand Dungeons & Dragons and what it is and how we interact with it as dungeon masters and how we interact with it as dungeon performers. Okay. So first of all, Bass Reeves has a wife. He has a beautiful wife who loves him. So Bass's wife, Bass becomes the first government-installed U.S. Marshal, right? For realsies Marshal, badge on the badge over the heart, right? Like, and he goes out with a government star and says, I'm bringing you in, right? And brings in criminals, right? And this is a big deal because he was the first black people in America to do this, right? And so Bass Reeves does this, and he starts bringing home money. Like, this is, because he gets bounties, right? Actually, he doesn't get, it's not a bounty. It's a sum paid by the government to bring in criminals, right? And he does get money for each criminal he brings in, and he starts making bank, right? So his wife buys a piano. Now, this is a big deal, right? Because Bass Reeves, this is in the time of Reconstruction. This is in America, right? So first of all, 10 years ago, black men and black women were slaves, and Bass Reeves and his wife were literally slaves, right? So, but now they come up, like they're there, right? They've made, they've made their bones, and they're actual Americans, landowning Americans with an actual house, right? And Bass Reeves' wife buys a piano. This is a big deal because in those days, you just came out of slavery. Like, owning a piano, like, this is setting a bar for the entire culture, right? And the show goes into this, that like Bass Reeves and his wife were like examples in their community for people saying, yes, we just came out of slavery, but we can be powerful, we can be relevant, we can be dramatic, we can be dynamic, right? And it's a powerful story. It's so powerful, right? So Bass Reeves' wife buys this piano, right? And she has somebody over, and somebody says, you own a piano? Wow. Where did you learn to play, right? And she says this thing. She says, I was on a plantation, and the plantation owner's wife taught me to play, right? Literally when I was a slave, right? And then she says the important part. This is why I made this video. She says, listen to this. She said, the piano was hers, but the music was mine. All right. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So basically, when we start a Dungeons & Dragons story, right? Dungeons & Dragons, the IP is owned by Hasbro, okay? Dungeons & Dragons, the story, the campaign you're in, is being run by the Dungeon Master. Dungeons & Dragons, the campaign that you're in, is fundamentally owned by every other dungeon performer at the table, right? But you are creating that story, and the story that you're creating there is yours. It is yours, right? And the story told specifically with your dungeon performer character is all yours, okay? The campaign belongs to the dungeon master. The campaign belongs to Hasbro. It belongs to the dungeon master. It belongs to every other dungeon performer, okay? But the story told with your dungeon performer character belongs to you, okay? And you can use it to do things that nobody else at the table wants to do or is even aware of, okay? And that's the point, right? This woman, she was taught how to play by the plantation owner, right? The piano was not hers, but the music was, right? She said, you know, the piano was hers, but the music was mine, right? And so the reason why I'm telling you this is we are not in the bad situation that that Bass Reeves' wife was. But there are times where the dungeon master goes in a direction we don't want to go, where a dungeon performer is there just to cut goblins in half, doesn't care about role-playing, doesn't care about the narrative, doesn't care about power, right? The power that we can take back from the world through Dungeons and Dragons. All they care about is, I roll the dice and I do 6 hit points of damage and I cut that goblin in half, right? So you can have something stolen from you. You can have something controlled in a way you don't want from your dungeon master and from your other dungeon performers. But that doesn't mean that your story told with your dungeon performer character is not 100% yours, and that you cannot accomplish incredible things with it, that you can't achieve with it, that you can't cut a new path, that you cannot bushwhack this real world with the story of your dungeon performer character, even as it is limited sometimes by dungeon masters who are not on point, right? By dungeon performers who are not on point. And that can happen for multiple reasons. You can have a great dungeon master who's going through a divorce and everything they're running is garbage, right? You can have a dungeon performer who's an amazing dungeon performer, has supported you for years, right? In you two telling narratives that matter, but now, you know, that person is, forgot to do their taxes and are struggling that, So your dungeon masters and your dungeon performers will fail you, and they will control. They will control parts of the narrative in ways that you don't want, right? And the campaign is theirs, but the dungeon performer character's story is yours, and you can always cut a path to epic, cut a path to awesome, cut a path to imagination, even when not everyone at the table is there with you and going in the right direction, right? Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion, nothing more, nothing less. What's important, what's really important, is when I get to hear from you, right? When I get to hear your opinion. And I've had some trouble in the comments lately, and so I just want to make this clear. I'm always willing to hear you as long as you are commenting on my content and not insulting me. If you insult me, I will clap back. And honestly, I'm going to be very clear about this. You can even insult my content as long as you are careful about what words you use, right? And be respectful. So I do want to hear your opinion, but I am putting that box around it, right? Your opinion needs to be expressed cleanly and clearly and fairly without insult, all right? And I'm just trying to be honest, because I've had to, I blocked a few people lately just because they, and the biggest reason is they insulted me personally with words that are absolutely horrendous and really are diagnoses, which none of them were credentialed to do. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you for letting me clarify that there at the end. Please consider like and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.